Now, following more than 10 years of negotiations and 2 years of technical fine-tuning, the European Union and 6 Southern African countries signed an economic partnership agreement in Botswana. The deal seeks to build on an existing €60 billion a year trade relationship. Here's Angelo Coppola with more on that.
The EPA covers Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique, Namibia, Swaziland and South Africa and is known as the SADC EPA, despite including only 6 of SADC's 15 member states. The upside for those countries is expected to be substantial though, individually and regionally.
You can have a fruit, let's say you get a fruit that gets picked in Swaziland and can get processed in Lesotho and can then be exported to the EU without having the normal rules of origin applying to this. And that's a big benefit because it will help industries to develop within the region, not being bound by, having a product coming only from a country, has to be processed in that country. So there can be sort of, sharing of that sort of behavior within the countries themselves.
Meanwhile, there's a separate agreement with South Africa. Several agricultural products are expected to benefit, including wine, sugar, ethanol, several dairy products and flowers. Another area that's been resolved is the question of geographical indicators, particular to South Africa, like champagne is particular to France.
So the same thing like Karoo lamb, honeybush tea, rooibos, those are now geographical indicators to South Africa's advantage. So you can't have another company marketing rooibos if it's not from South Africa.
While this progress is good news, one has to focus on the bigger picture, that trilateral free trade agreement area, which has slowed down. And if it has to get back on track, it has to happen quite quickly, because at the moment, intra-African trade on average is around 11%. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in Johannesburg.
Let's go back to our top story. Of course, 6 Southern African countries have signed an economic partnership agreement with the European Union. We're joined by Angelo Coppola in Johannesburg with the update on that story. Angelo, once again, welcome to the show. Now, why is this deal considered a first of its kind, of course, between the EU and the African region? Give us some insight into what makes this deal different.
Well, Uche, up until now, the relationship between most African countries and European countries has been one where the African countries export their minerals and resources to Europe, with the Europeans exporting mostly yellow metals, chemicals, and of course other equipment into Africa. And it was almost a one-sided arrangement. In fact, it was. This agreement changes that approach. There's a development bias, we're told, which extends duty and quota-free access to all the signatories, except of course South Africa, because there's a separate deal there. There are other protective measures that have also been put in place for those 5 African countries and their fragile industries, and that's quite an important play as far as this agreement goes. Uche?
Now, Angelo, the agreement will now be submitted to the European Parliament for approval. Tell us a bit about the timelines involved. Of course, it took about 10 years to negotiate this deal. Going forward, how much time can we expect?
Well, the bottom line here is it still has to go through the European Parliament and it has to fit into their voting program. That's only after it's been ratified by the 28 member EU states. So that's got to happen first. These states have been involved with the negotiations for some time, so it is unlikely there'll be any individual country issues, but you know what? The devil's in the detail and the ratification. In terms of South Africa, we're led to believe that it's already been endorsed by the ruling party's cabinet, and it could be ratified as early as next week. Uche?
Well, thank you so much, Angelo, for those insights. Great to have you. Angelo Coppola joining us in Johannesburg.